To make switching to the new Boost Mobile risk-free, we're offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
So why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Because you have nothing to lose. Boost Mobile is offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
No, I asked why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Oh.
Wouldn't.
Because you love wasting money as a way to punish yourself because your mother never showed you enough love as a child?
Whoa. Easy there.
Yeah.
Applies to online activations. Requires port in and auto pay. Customers activating in stores may be charged non-refundable activation fees.
Ay, se murió mi teléfono.
Necesitas uno nuevo. En Verizon podemos ahorrar en el Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus con Galaxy AI.
¿En serio?
Tú también puedes ahorrar con Verizon. Sí, en serio. Ahorra en 4 teléfonos Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus nuevos al intercambiar 4 teléfonos de nuestras mejores marcas con el Limited Ultimate. Además, ahorra en un Galaxy Watch o Tab. Visita tu tienda Verizon hoy. El reloj y la tablet requieren un plan de servicio. Se requiere que el teléfono de intercambio sea de Apple, Samsung o Google. Se aplican términos adicionales. Las funciones Galaxy AI de Samsung son gratis durante el 2025 y requieren ingresar con una cuenta Samsung.
Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But some opinions are more useful than others. And we all want the good ones. The ones that shake things up, spark debates, and change minds. Financial Times readers know that their opinions are reliable because they're shaped by trusted journalism. Robust opinions, confident decisions. Source FT. To subscribe, go to ft.com/sourceft.
We're not even allowed to touch anything in this house anyway.
Yes, you are. You're just not allowed to fly a fucking drone in my house.
You finally said it. Your house. It's your house. I want Mom. She likes us more than you do.
Really? Well, Mom's not here, is she?
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Hollywood Gold. I'm your host, Daniela Taplin Lundberg, and I'm here with my right hand, Vanessa Mendel. How are you, Vanessa?
Hello, I'm very good. I'm very excited.
Big week for us.
It's a big week.
It's so funny. We're about to dive into Goodrich with Hallie Meyers-Shyer, our work wife and bestie, and the filmmaker and writer of the film that we have coming out this Friday in theaters, October 18th. Guys, go get your tickets right now. Just press pause and go on Fandango and buy those tickets. But, you know, I feel like loyal listeners, for those of you who have been with us since the beginning, you know, you've sort of heard us sort of talk about this film for, you know, a couple years now. We were developing it, then we were raising money for it, we were assembling cast, then we were in production. And so now this is sort of this is the end of the road. It's about to come out in theaters, and this is like birthing a baby.
It really is.
So we're so excited to dive in with Hallie. She is so funny and brilliant, and we've just become so close over this amazing period, because that's what happens when you make a movie with someone. So can't wait to get going. Hallie Meyers-Shyer, my sister, my work wife, we've been through so much. We'd say it's 3 years now?
Yeah.
We've been working on this movie, Goodrich. And so rightly, we decided the movie's coming out this Friday. Could not be more excited. October 18th. Everyone, all loyal listeners, you must go and see it. You will be so rewarded. It is the most gratifying experience. Hallie, we have so much to talk about. So as these things go, I want you to take me, because I'm not sure I even know this story. The first moment this came to you, why you decided to write it, and then we'll get going.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Daniela. I'm
Of
so
course.
excited to be on my favorite podcast. This is big for me.
This is huge.
So I wrote this movie in 2018, which is wild because it's, I think, 6 years now. I had just made Home Again, and I was kind of trying to think of what I wanted to do next. And this character of Andy Goodrich was very much inside of me, and I knew that it had to come out, and I knew it had to be Michael Keaton. So it really started with those two things. I'm a longtime Michael Keaton fan, and I hadn't seen him do in a very long time the thing that I loved him for most, which was comedy, and his kind of nuanced, authentic Michael Keaton kind of comedy, which is so specific.
And what was that for you? Was that like Mr. Mom and Night Shift, or was that like later stuff? Like, what was it that was, because for me, it's Mr. Mom.
Totally Mr. Mom, Multiplicity.
Yeah.
Night Shift, it's like, it's fun to watch a movie where somebody leaps off the screen literally and you're like, that's a movie star in a role where they're kind of not the star of the movie.
That's right. Like Henry Winkler was the actual star of that movie. Is that right?
Yes, yes. And Henry is so terrific, but Henry was the Fonz. I mean, he was already so big, and there's just this other person. It's like when you're watching an episode of Growing Pains and Leonardo DiCaprio's on and you're like, who is that?
Totally.
But now we know Michael Keaton is Michael Keaton, but still you feel that when you watch Night Shift. You feel it's like he created a different color. So he's just somebody that I've always loved, and I love his specific brand of comedy because it's unique. It's only he can do it, and it's not big,
Yeah.
But also it's a really personal story for me. And my father remarried and has 2 little kids, and they're not so little anymore. And I had a complicated relationship towards that. And I sort of felt like, I knew other people who had these modern families and everything was so cozy. And I felt like my situation was kind of specific and unique to me. And then once I opened my eyes to the world, I noticed a lot of people had this feeling. So, you don't want you want your work to be personal, but you also want it to be universal, so you can't write a story that's too personal to you that no one can relate to. And so then I think I've told you this, but then I was watching a documentary about Arthur Miller that his daughter Rebecca made. And she is his daughter from, later in life. And she made this documentary about him that was so adoring. She was so in love with him. And then she interviewed the 2 kids that he had from his first marriage. And they were, 20 years older than her. And they were his kids when they're always his kids, but he had them when he was, writing his Death of a Salesman. And
yes,
and
the great works of his life. Yeah.
Yes. And they said to her, we had a different dad, sort of, they were not as glowing about him. And then I thought, okay, I'm onto something because I'm just randomly watching this documentary and I see this difference. So then I got to work writing it, and it went through a lot of different, things that happened and didn't happen. But Michael came on pretty quickly. That was my first step, sending it to Michael.
Writing the script, just to take me back a little bit, because I kind of love to hear process. And
oh, yeah.
Were you giving it to, because I just know you're writing a script right now and you're kind of like, you have your process, right? Like you're kind of protective until you're not. Were you giving it to your family for feedback? Like, did you ever show it to your father, or did he know that you were sort of writing this tale that was loosely based on your own experience?
Yes. I don't believe in giving your work to a lot of people. I just believe in giving it to a couple people that you really trust. I get overwhelmed if one person likes one thing, another person likes another, that overwhelms me. So I really extensively outline. So I outlined it for a really long time. I was probably a 40-page outline with dialogue, with, different things here and there. And then once I have like a pretty solid draft, then I'll send it, both of my parents are writers. So they're kind of who I send it to. And a beautiful thing about having writer parents is they don't take things super personally because they're able to look at it as the work, So I felt like also having Michael Keaton in mind separated it from my family. It didn't ever feel like my dad. It always felt like Michael Keaton. And it's not my dad, it's a character.
Sure.
But the things that were reminiscent of my life, became a movie world by casting Michael in my head.
Let me just ask you one more question about this, because, I'll jump in like when I come into this, but this story felt so relevant to me as well. And we really bonded about that early on.
Yes.
But were there moments from your own existence that you kind of like used as jumping off points for different scenes and stuff? Like, was there anything that you had ever like talked with the younger siblings about? Like, was there anything there that felt like it had been really taken from real life and sort of dramatized, or no?
There's little things. I mean, no, I never spoke to them about it, but there's definitely things like when Keaton's character confuses the kids' names, like that's directly from my life. Not so much like specific scenes or moments, but definitely little authentic beats like that. That are very true. Some of the father-daughter, less the stuff with the little kids, because my father's children are 17 and off to college. And it's like, I was not super present when they were young because I was in college and I lived in New York. But some of the stuff between him and his older daughter was really stuff that I related to. Just the themes of seeing him, parent, which you don't get to see your own parent because you're in it with them, but watching them do it to somebody else, you notice things and you experience it very differently. And yeah, I only, lived with my dad till I was 14 or so. And they lived with him till they're, off to college. So it was a really different experience. And that was something I wanted to, it's cathartic to write,
I mean, I would just say, like, for me, I have such deep affection and adoration for my father. He's also in the business. We really bonded about this. We both grew up in Los Angeles. My dad was a very serious career guy. He went to Princeton. I went to Princeton. He became a film producer. I became a film producer. Like, my whole life in a way was like an homage to the reverence I had for him. I'm not sure he's aware of that. Like, I don't think he's someone who thinks super deeply about like those kinds of life choices. And so for me, when I read this script, when Grace has her moment, not to ruin it for anyone, but she has this major moment at the end of the film where she finally sort of gets to say everything she's ever wanted to say to him. I wept. Like, I wept so heavily in a way that like I couldn't recover, because it was like the speech I never said to my own father. And it was like, it was funny, and it was so heartbreaking, and it was like all the things I would ever want to say to him, but also with like still a deep love. And, it wasn't meant to be like a breakup scene. It was just meant to be like
that's the thing. I mean, things are so black and white in film because you need to follow it very clearly, and the things have to be one thing. And they, writers often, if there's a side character, they give them one shtick, but that's not real life. And I am incredibly close with my dad. I speak to him every day, sometimes multiple times a day. And that doesn't mean there's not a lot of complications there and things that I, have wrapped into my writing along the way. But, so I was trying to make their relationship layered, and she really loves him and he really loves her. And it all culminates, at the real end of the movie when he calls her his soulmate, because that's really what those two people are. So at the end of the day, it's a real love letter to a father-daughter relationship. But, parent-child relationships are complicated. So that's what I think I really wanted to capture.
Well, Hal, I think it's a love letter to these complicated relationships that just sort of are now. Like, they're almost the norm. They're not abnormal anymore. It's just like I have more relationships and friends who have parents who have separated or divorced or remarried or whatever it is than the standard one marriage for 60 years or whatever that is. So this felt like very normal to me. But I would say, to pivot a little bit, the movie felt like a real homage to the movies of like the 70s and 80s that I also revered, right? There were such shades of like, and I really want to talk about this because we've never really had a chance to talk about this, but I felt Mike Nichols, I felt James L. Brooks, I felt a little of that Dustin Hoffman, Jo Beth Williams relationship in Kramer versus Kramer. Like, I always loved that friendship so much.
On that, people have like their movies, right? And like Kramer is one of my movies like that means so much to me. So that was a huge influence on this movie. And in the first draft, that character was a woman, and they had like a little bit of a flirtation, and it just felt, first of all, it was directly taken from Kramer versus Kramer, but it also just felt too on the nose. And then I switched it to a gay man because I just felt fresher to me and realer, and I liked that idea. And then when it was a woman, I had in my head cast a young Terry Garr.
Yes.
So I named the character Terry, even though it was a man.
Oh my God, I never knew that.
So there was a little leftover from the original draft in it still.
Oh my God, I love that Terry Garr. I love that little snippet. No one knows that. I mean, probably people know that, but I didn't realize that. I'm
just like a huge Terry Garr head. I love her. I think there's no, she's just a character actress who's excellent and hilarious and adorable, and they don't make them like that anymore.
We talked a lot about this when we were casting, because casting was just, which we did this movie with Avi Kaufman, which was such a journey because, in fact, I think we talked about Terry Garr, but we talked a lot about like these great character actors of the 70s and 80s who weren't all models, right? They were just great actors, and they had interesting faces, and like some of them were schlubby and like didn't have six packs, and it was just like it was a different world, right? And you know, we talked about Terry Garr like in Tootsie, just like popping out of that bathroom. You know, she was just the best.
I mean, I remember actually emailing AV, who I love, and you and me and AV had a great time casting this movie. It was a really great experience. But I remember emailing her when we were trying to cast the role of the woman who gets in the little argument with him at the rehab, the receptionist at the rehab, and I emailed a photo of the woman that Steve Martin gets in the argument with in Transplanes and Automobiles, an actress that John Hughes used all the time. She was also in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Absolutely. She played the secretary in Ferris Bueller. Totally. And it was like, I think, you know, it felt to me like that was a light bulb for AV because, you know, AV casts Succession. She casts Ang Lee movies. She doesn't do as many comedies. That's just like, you know, you play it straight. And then if it's funny, it works. And I think that casting, like the Planes, Trains, and Automobiles reference was perfect because that woman always nailed it, you know, and she was a proper character actress. And then the woman we ended up casting, I felt like was the new embodiment of her. She's so good.
Yeah. And, you know, I thought, you know, comedy is sort of king to me, as you know, in my world. Like, and I think that casting smaller roles comedically makes so much out of those roles, and they're so additive, especially when you have a lead like Michael, who, you know, he started in comedy. So I find that obviously he's a great, you know, dramatic actor, but in the world of this movie, he talks quickly, he walks quickly. Like, I just wanted him to be surrounded by people that really kept up with his pace. And pace is a huge part of comedy, and pace is not a huge part of drama. So that's why it was so important to me to cast people that have comedic timing, even in parts that aren't necessarily on the page super comedic.
I mean, like, I'm thinking even of the accountant, Andrew Leeds, who like came to visit us and brought us cookies like a couple times on set. Like the way he eats that shrimp, you know, like he got it.
Yes.
I love these actors who like, they have a whole storyline for the two scenes they're in or the scene they're in, you know, and they create a real character out of the few lines that they've been given. And I always appreciate it because it's important and it like contributes to the whole. So I loved the casting process with you because also I really felt like we were on the same page and we really do have the same references.
Well, you have such good taste. You know, I met with somebody yesterday who said she's done your podcast about Florida Project, and I was singing your praises. And one of my favorite things about working with you is it's so nice to have a producer with such elevated taste like you have, because, you know, it's just, you can't really create that, you know, and like we are simpatico in that way. And that was just an enormous source of comfort and asset to the movie.
Well, I'll also say like it doesn't, you know, you don't always totally align with your filmmaker. And so when you do, it's kind of something that you have to like take care of, because I was saying this to my husband. It was just like, oh my God, I found Hallie. Like, I always want to work with her because I know that like at the end of the day, we do feel the same things are important, and we're kind of the same ilk for whatever reason. You know, we grew up in the same place and all these things. So, that's so nice to hear.
Ms. Parsons has pulled both her and our consent to speak with you.
Okay, look.
I can leave a message.
I'll leave a message.
Okay.
I want to see my fucking wife! I'm sorry.
Ay, se murió mi teléfono.
¿Necesitas uno nuevo? En Verizon podemos ahorrar en el Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus con Galaxy AI.
¿En serio?
Tú también puedes ahorrar con Verizon. Sí, en serio. Ahorra en 4 teléfonos Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus nuevos al intercambiar 4 teléfonos de nuestras mejores marcas con el Limited Ultimate. Además, ahorra en un Galaxy Watch o Tab. Visita tu tienda Verizon hoy. El reloj y la tablet requieren un plan de servicio. Se requiere que el teléfono de intercambio sea de Apple, Samsung o Google. Se aplican términos adicionales. Las funciones Galaxy AI de Samsung son gratis durante el 2025 y requieren ingresar con una cuenta Samsung.
Opinions will always differ, and so they should, because everyone draws from different influences. Parents, peers, politics, education, media, culture. What you believe depends on who you believe. Financial Times readers know that their opinions are reliable because they're shaped by trusted journalism. Robust opinions, confident decisions. Source, FT. To subscribe, go to ft.com/sourceft.
I've never seen you cry.
Really?
Okay, once. One time. I hated it. Don't do it.
Okay. Noted.
Coming back to the actual process, I love hearing about the writing of it and thinking about Keaton.
Yeah, my first step was Michael. I went directly to Michael before anything else. It was me, the script, and Michael.
Like, did you just call Tony Howard on the phone? Like, what was the situation?
His agent, our beloved Tony Howard, I'd worked with her on Home Again because she represents Michael Sheen and Candice Bergen.
Yes.
So I knew Tony from Home Again, and I had a really nice relationship with her, and I loved working with both of those actors very much. So I called her when I was probably like halfway through the script, and I said, I just want you to know I'm writing a movie for Michael Keaton. And she said, well, forget it. I'll never do it. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to write it anyway. She says, he's just really picky. He just doesn't do a lot of stuff he doesn't want to. He's just not going to, whatever. Like, good luck, but like, let me know when you've written it. So I kept writing. Obviously, I was not discouraged by this, as you know.
Never are. Loyal listeners, she
No.
never is. She never takes the first no as a no. It's just a soft pass.
Yeah, that was that. If anything, I went home and wrote harder because I knew in my heart he was going to do it, is the truth.
Interesting.
It was like I had written, I've said this before, but writing to a great actor is like writing to a great piece of music, like I had him in my head. I wrote to him. So I just thought he's got to feel this too, this can't be unrequited.
Yeah.
So then I finished it. I wrote it. I finished it. I sent it off to Michael Keaton and I went to Vegas for a friend's birthday. And I got on the plane and then I touched down in Vegas and I got an email from Tony Howard that says, can you meet Michael today? Yeah. Which was the greatest email of my life, except I was in Las Vegas. So I thought, do I just get back on the plane and just pretend I'm not in Vegas? And I also don't want to tell anyone I'm in Vegas.
Yeah.
But I said, I'm out of town. Very elusive.
Totally.
And I'll be back on Monday and we'll meet him immediately. And so then Michael and I had a meal. We talked about the movie and I fell more deeply for him. And then I knew I wanted to get a great producer involved and we sent it to a couple people and Amy responded also really quickly. And I went over to her house and in true Amy fashion, the pages of the script were all over the house. They weren't bound. Yeah, they were just loosely all over the house. And anyone who's ever met Amy knows she's so there's a coziness to her, but she's so bright. So I felt immediately like I felt with you, that felt like a person that I could work with so naturally. And she said to me, this is the kind of movie that I made when I was the head of Sony. And now this movie, this genre is sort of a lost art. So that really meant a lot to me. So then Amy and I went out, tried to get the movie made. And, it went through what a lot of independent films go through, which is, I won't bore you with the details of it, but one financier, then another financier, then they fell through. And then the pandemic happened. And then I got just kind of disillusioned, honestly, and I put it away for a minute. It just wasn't happening easily. And nothing happens easily, but it felt like it actually wasn't happening at all. So I put it to rest, but it was the kind of thing that I knew I really wanted to make because, I should backtrack. We auditioned somebody at Amy's house.
For the part of Grace.
And I saw Michael do Andy Goodrich in the living room. And my heart went pitter patter. I saw him be excellent in this part. And then that was the greatest loss for me when the movie was not getting made. I'd seen the movie and I knew it had to happen because I just was so heartbroken that I was never going to see that on the screen because he slipped so naturally into the character. It was like no notes.
Yes. It was just exactly how you had envisioned it.
It was just a great match. Yes. It was just, was exactly... all was right in the world that night. So anyway, when it didn't happen, I was quite heartbroken that I was never going to see him play this part. And then a friend of ours, this is going to bring me to you now. a friend of ours.
But this is like a couple years later. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Well, just a couple years in a global pandemic later, I met with you.
So I was being represented by UTA and Mikey Schwartzwright, our dear friend, who was like, so what are you up to? And I was like, as God is my witness, Hallie, I was like, I really like this filmmaker, Hallie Meyers-Shyer, and I just feel like I don't understand why she's not like doing 100 things. Like, I just think she's like, I just knew. I was just like, she's got so much talent, and I don't understand why she hasn't directed something again. Obviously, like, there's many reasons. You were writing all these other things, the pandemic,
yes,
blah, blah, blah.
And I had a child.
And he's like, she's my girl. Like, Hallie's my girl. I went to high school with her. I don't know where you know Mikey from originally. Is that true?
Yeah, from high school, yeah.
Okay. So he texts you at the meal, and I was like, oh, okay. This was like, you go through these like agent lunches, and you're like, is anything actually going to come from this? But he texted you, and then we met the next week. And over Zoom, I think, and I wanted you to rewrite one of our projects, and you were like, I have no interest in that. But I have this script that like, I want to make. And I was like, okay, well, I'll read it.
Well, I could tell that you would get it. That was part of it. I don't just willy-nilly pitch this movie. It was like kind of locked away. And I actually wasn't available. I was writing a movie for Sony, I think, at the time. And so I wasn't available to do your movie. But I liked you so much that I thought maybe I'll send her Goodrich and something will come of that.
As the girls in my office know, it takes a lot to get me to like read something like overnight. Like, I really have to like the concept or whatever. But the way you talked about it, I was like, is this my life story? So I read the script overnight. I wept. I was like, everyone has to read it. And then coincidentally, we had like given it to the interns to read. And one of our interns is like the genius Sasha Seinfeld, the daughter of Jerry, like future writer who will like win Emmys, I'm sure. And she was like an intern for Stakehold, and she really liked it. And maybe she had read it before. I don't know if you guys, in any event. So like,
no, I think because she DM'd me about it. I think she read it as an intern, and she said that's how I knew you guys liked it, which is so funny. Thank you to Sasha Seinfeld.
And also the ladies know when like I get a bee in my bonnet, I'm like, all right, this is happening. So I was like, we had a Zoom. I was like, I love this. It speaks to me so deeply. I could tell so many stories about my own father that relate to this tale of Grace and Andy. And we kind of were like, okay, let's go. So then Mikey was kind of like, oh, I made this happen. He was like, you should come out to LA and meet with this new financier. They've got like a lot of money and like they want to make movies. And the head of it, he'll read a script overnight. So I go meet with Dave Kaplan at the Soho House. And if anyone's been to the LA Soho House, it's like so crowded now that like you can't even find a place to sit. Like there's all these like out of work actors just like writing their scripts. Like it's just so, it's like very, very crowded. And so we go and we sit there and he's like, what do you got? And so I pitch him two things. He reads Goodrich overnight next to his girlfriend. And he calls me the next morning and he's like, I'm crying. I want to do this. Like, we like this one. We don't like your other one, but we really like this one. And I was like, amazing. This is too easy. And by the way, it was too easy. Like there were so many like dramas.
But there was so much that led up to it that like we, the film deserved this easy section. This was 5 years after I'd written it probably.
And he was like, well, how much can you make this for? And I was like, I literally was just like, 10. Because your former budget had been 20. I knew I could make it less than that.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to make it for like 6, which I knew what he wanted me to say. I was like, I think I can get away with 10. So I go 10. We hadn't even budgeted yet. And meanwhile, you're like, can we make it for 10? I don't know. Like, can we make a good movie for $10 million?
Can anybody?
But Hal, if you recall, like it had been a year or two since you had been corresponding with Keaton.
Right. I didn't want to
do a false start again.
Yeah, because we had a false start and I just didn't want to go back to him until it was like definitely going to happen. Right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So then we started going out to look for Graces, which is like the other, is this a supporting lead?
The Grace part, I think, is a really personal part to me. And I had a hard time picturing anyone else but myself in this part. And what was so great about Mila was, like you said, she checked so many of these boxes, but she was also just like, a lot of the movies is a boxing match between these two. And she, we knew that she could keep up with him and she was so hilarious and she's so beloved by men and women. But I think what was surprising too was like how much she completed this puzzle. Like she just really brought it. And that was a very exciting thing to see on set.
Well, I feel like the first time, because we have to talk about like all our amazing crew that we managed to assemble, and it was just like, it was all very curated, which you are. I mean, I think the thing about your process is that you have thought everything through. And so nothing is accidental. And that comes from like the writing of the script, all the themes that you managed to like paint throughout, to the palette of the sets, to the costumes, to the like yellow of his sweater. Like all these things have been so thoughtfully put together by you. And so when you watch this movie, nothing is accidental, which I feel like is just evidence of your genius. And I don't use that word loosely, but I would say that when you finally brought the cast together, which you really labored over, like you labored over every single decision.
I think casting is like half the battle of making a movie. If you cast your movie correctly, your job is so much easier. If it's the right marriage of actor and part, things go so much smoother, because there's so much that's unexpected on a set. And that is part of why I like things to be so organized for the way I work. Like when I was speaking to this other producer who's a mutual friend of ours who works with Sean Baker, who I'm a huge fan of his movies. And she was saying there's a lot of beautiful chaos to his process, and making changes on the day and things like that. And I know David O. Russell works like that. And I'm, some of his movies are some of my favorite movies, especially in this genre. Like I really love his work. And I think part of what's so special about his work is the spontaneity, and you can see that secret sauce in the movie. That's not me at all. So in order for me to be my loosest on set, because I think you have to be really loose, you have to see what's going to happen, and you cannot control. Once you're rolling, the control has to be gone a little bit, and you have to let the magic happen. So the parts that you can control, I do want to control, because I will do my best work if everything is sort of organized. And as much as you can control, because there's so much that you can't, So getting all of our ducks in a row. And for me, it's like storyboarding is a good microcosm for my process. I want to storyboard every single inch of the movie. And then I'm so happy to change it because I know what I need. And when I was in a room by myself and there was not people saying this problem is happening and which color of this do you like and what's going on here and this person is doing this and we're losing this son and blah, 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 blah. I've thought it out. So I know that I need an insert of that. I know that I need these two angles for sure. And then when we get there, like we can talk about our wonderful DP, Jamie. If he has an idea and he throws something at me, I'm going to say, yeah, let's try it. Because I've already thought out what I know I need. So if I hadn't thought that out, then I would be less open to trying things.
So I wanted to go back to like another like lovely memory, which was the table read.
Oh, yeah.
We've had a couple episodes where like the table read goes so poorly. The While You Were Sleeping episode, Glickman was like, the table read went so poorly that two actors tried to quit the night of after the table read.
Oh, no. I love that.
Like Peter
movie.
Gallagher and Bill Pullman tried to pull out and they couldn't. Their agents wouldn't let them. But I was just like, that is so hilarious. I mean, in retrospect, obviously that would have been devastating. But I remember the table read, I think we felt like we had assembled like this really special cast. And I remember you got up and like thanked everyone. We did this table read at CAA. We managed to get most of the cast there.
Mm-hmm.
I remember just like checking every time there was a laugh.
Yeah.
And by the end, the script was like filled with checks. I mean, it was such a like wonderful moment in my memory.
It was a great moment. That's the most nervous I've been on the whole movie, like more nervous than the first day of shooting was that, just because it's like, does it work? It's going to be the slowest it's ever been. It's going to be, like, it's like you've assembled all these pieces and does it work? And it really did. It really worked. And the jokes played and the heart played, and it was just great to see. And it also, like you said, actors, with a bad table read, they get cold feet or they want to pull out or they're not sure. And I felt in the room there was a sense of like excitement from the actors, which is really, that's what you want as a writer director, to feel like they're comfortable.
I remember that being one of the most fun days.
That's a win.
That was a real win. And we went and got pizza afterwards.
Well, should we also mention that my mother was on mute under my assistant's name because I didn't want her name coming up.
You have to mention that. I'm not sure you wanted to mention it, but it was
she was desperate to hear the table read, but I wouldn't allow her because I thought it might intimidate people because she was going to be there remotely, and I didn't want her big name coming up on the screen.
Your mother, Nancy Meyers, like the godmother of romantic comedy. Yeah, that.
So she patched herself in under my assistant's name so she could secretly watch the table read, and was texting me, "Michael's so wonderful. Mila's so wonderful."
I think there was a moment, Hallie, it was either your mother or Amy who was meant to be on mute and they weren't on mute. And
it was Amy. Amy had a cold and she kept blowing her nose or sneezing. Yeah.
Like classic moments.
So I could see a guy go, yeah, but by the way, let me ask, do I seem gay though? Do I?
I am very uncomfortable right now.
No, dude, I'm telling you.
Great seeing you, man. Alex!
Ay, se murió mi teléfono.
¿Necesitas uno nuevo? En Verizon podemos ahorrar en el Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus con Galaxy AI.
¿En serio?
Tú también puedes ahorrar con Verizon. Sí, en serio. Ahorra en 4 teléfonos Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus nuevos al intercambiar 4 teléfonos de nuestras mejores marcas con el Limited Ultimate. Además, ahorra en un Galaxy Watch o Tab. Visita tu tienda Verizon hoy. El reloj y la tablet requieren un plan de servicio. Se requiere que el teléfono de intercambio sea de Apple, Samsung o Google. Se aplican términos adicionales. Las funciones Galaxy AI de Samsung son gratis durante el 2025 y requieren ingresar con una cuenta Samsung.
I used to think buying foundation online was impossible. How am I supposed to find my shade when I can't even get it right in store? Then I discovered Il Maquillage. I took their AI-powered quiz to find my custom match, and wow, this foundation is literally my skin in a bottle. The undertone and coverage are spot on. It's so neutral and weightless. I can't even tell I'm wearing makeup. Plus, with Try Before You Buy, you can try your full size at home for 14 days. Take the Power Match quiz now at ilmaquillage.com/quiz. ILMAKIAGE.com/quiz.
Talk me through the shoot and your process. Like, what do you remember about it? Highs and lows, if you can.
Oh my God. Well, an absolute whirlwind. Shooting this movie in 25 days is a Herculean effort. Also, audiences don't know you made it in 25 days for $10 million. So they see the movie and they expect it to look and feel a certain way, especially if it's in a genre that they have seen their whole lives. So the time was sort of how to make it look and feel that way without the budget, which is why I've realized most independent movies have one location or take place in an apartment in Sherman Oaks. And, people say horror movies can do it. It's like, well, yeah, because the lights are always off. It's like, dressing a serial killer is not difficult. But making this man look like a person who, at 70 has lived a life in a world full of curation and a collected life and a home that would reflect him. And that's part of what's interesting about shooting in a real home versus building a set, which is obviously a great dream of mine to one day build a set. But the nice thing about a practical location is it feels like somebody lives there. My pet peeve is when you see a movie and it feels like fresh sheets and just straight out of a package, and clothing that looks so crisp.
100%. It's like my primary issue with a lot of these Netflix movies. They just feel like they're rolling through the same sets over and over again, and they're just buying the new, the sheets from Walmart or wherever they're buying them, and they're just and there's nothing unique or curated about them.
Totally. And every male character has charcoal sheets and every female character has some sort of floral sheet. And it's, but we wanted, I think, to make this movie feel inviting and warm, and that's difficult to do. And it takes, time and money and effort. So, I mean, the most we could do was prep. We prepped our hearts out, and me and Jamie, our DP, and Claire Parkinson, our costume designer, and Richard Bloom, our production designer, spent a lot of time and effort sort of creating this color palette for the movie. So it felt very united, and that was a big thing of it. And I mean, every decision is the most important decision you'll ever make. So just, thinking it through, nothing was left up to chance, that shouldn't be. So we really prepped so extensively. And I felt when we got to day one, like I felt ready. I felt prepared. And we did not have a lot of time, but we just worked so hard. Storyboards, like everything. And I did get a good amount of time with Jamie, which really helped because we went through every, sometimes on independent films, you don't get that kind of time ahead of time with your DP. And that was really important to me on this movie because I didn't get that on my last movie. I had 2 weeks with the DP. So Jamie and I went through every scene extensively. We talked about it. And, he had a really interesting process, which is we would go through a scene and then I could sort of tell when he would get excited or stir crazy and he would say, leave it to me. And he would just get up and leave the room. Like he was excited to go like, okay, let me go make that one happen. Then we'll get to the next one.
Right.
And he would just go off to the place to go get the lenses and the cameras and the this and the that to make that. Once it was fresh and exciting for him, he went off and did that. And then I would sort of let him, I did, because my instinct would to be, let's work for 12 hours right now. And until we are blue in the face and pack in as much work as possible. What I could see, which is an important part about being a director, is also seeing other people's processes and not just making it all about yours. I wanted him to thrive and do what would make his work the best, which was little by little, but then feeling really excited.
I don't know how you feel, but like directing is like communicating your vision and making sure that like gets executed, but also being a leader to your troops and knowing like what gets them excited and energized and engaged and all those things. And I felt like you were really good at that. And then you also have to do that for your cast, like keeping them engaged and happy. And that's also takes time and effort and,
it's a lot of personalities to manage, and it's a constant dance of, honoring other people's process without hindering yours, and not because, everybody, the thing I look back on this movie most, and I feel most warm in my heart about is you create this thing, right? And then all these other people caring that much about the thing that you created is so emotional and humbling and beautiful. So I'm so grateful for that. And at the same time, you also know that like in your heart, you're really the only person thinking about the whole picture. Because on a set, one person is really looking at the budget. The other person's looking at the costumes. The other person's looking at, the props. One person's looking at the camera. And so load to be looking at all of it and make sure all of it is right and not just one thing, that's the most challenging part.
I heard this quote by Fincher once, which is like the hardest part of being a director is remembering what the thing that you wanted to do at the very beginning, because there's so many people sort of not eroding, but coming into your process and trying to make you make a different decision, not knowing what your holistic vision is. And so if you can maintain any semblance of like what you thought it should be at the beginning, you've like succeeded, but it's difficult because there's 100 people sort of unintentionally,
Yeah. And different actors, like you said, different actors need different things, but they're in the scene together. So it's like working with Michael Keaton and Carmen Ejejo, I felt like she was a person who liked to warm up and do a lot of takes. And I respect that. And honestly, so am I. So I really appreciate and respect that process. And she's such a wonderful actress. And Keaton doesn't like to do a lot of takes and likes to go kind of fresh. And you have to figure out a way, how can I honor both of you so that you're both thriving and you're both feeling, comfortable in the scene, and I don't want to wear him out when she's just getting started.
Yes. It's so hard. It's so hard. I mean, you're sort of bringing me back to like the days, but you managed to get like, I think the best out of everyone. And I also thought like your process of giving notes was really superb as well. I mean, I remember Kevin Pollak came on set maybe day 1 or 2. And I think just had like a slightly different take in the first takes that was just a little like you would imagine in my memory a very warm version of like a partner, like and he was kind of approaching it more like sharp edged. And I remember you being like, all right, this isn't what I envisioned. And this is perfectly good. It's just not what I envisioned for my vision of this character.
Yeah. I mean, different people bring different things to it. And I think he is such a comedy guy. And I think he's known for a lot of like wisecracking, things like that. And that's what he's so brilliant at. And when you hire somebody who's so good at something, you want them to do the thing that they're best at. But yeah, I felt, sometimes an actor needs guidance from it's more of a writing thing than maybe it's a directing thing. I don't know. I just come at things as a writer, and I just knew my intention for that, and helping him find that I thought really brought he and I closer, and I made the process really nice. And it's like, sometimes you do see things differently, and sometimes the actor's right. And sometimes you're right, but you find it together, and maybe there is no right. I don't know, but usually that's the process. And that is one of the hardest things about having no rehearsal, is sometimes you got to bang those ideas out during rehearsal and you guys find it together. And that's not unusual, for somebody to have a certain idea and you see it differently, and then you arrive at the right place together in rehearsal. So we had to sort of figure that out on set, which is hard, but you get there, like you figure it out.
Sometimes very quickly. And I remember that being like a very sort of succinct note you were able to give. And then he received it so well because it was very clear,
Yeah, that's like the hardest thing for me also, like, to overcome. Like it's a difficult part. I describe being a director as every minute on set, you are the person in a wedding ceremony when they say, does anybody object to this union? And you raise your hand.
Yeah.
That's you every moment of the day. Let me just tell you one thing, and there's something uncomfortable about it, but it's also like, you have to remember that like, this is the job and you didn't invent the job. Everybody knows what you're meant to do here and they want it. That's what I found is like, they don't want to feel alone.
Generally speaking, you were getting all the performances that you had ever wanted. And, every day on set is like feels like an entire eternity, like a whole year. And there are the highs and the lows. And you always sort of end up on I find, unless it's like a really tough day, you end up on a high because you manage to make your day, and that always feels impossible.
Yeah, it does. Especially, on a short shoot, it seems really impossible. I mean, a few like highlight memories, like I remember you and I, the first day when we were shooting a scene with Keaton in his office, asking Mila to babysit the kids. And he sort of did that thing where he said, like, I was just going to say that. And lately, I was just going to, he was Michael Keatoning. And I was upstairs with them, crouched in a corner, and you were downstairs. And then I came running down those stairs, and we were just like, yes, he was so good that it was so, and I remember filming the monitor and sending it to my family, just saying like, he's the greatest. So it was fun to be a fan, like I don't lose my fandom on set. So I felt like a fan of them so much so. And so that was a real highlight. That scene with him and Yuri coming outside the school, you and I were both laughing so hard. It was so fun to see two comedy people being hilarious. That was a really fun moment for you and I thought.
I love when we were in the Carmen Yogo scene and where she's performing.
Yeah.
That whole day, it was actually such an interesting day because we were in this little cafe or like bar, but he was doing real Keaton. He was doing like the eyebrows, and he was doing like the stuff that you just like, you love, you remember so well. I mean, like for in the 80s, he was like almost exclusively known for his like reactions.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing it like when he's watching her do this like very sexy performance, and he's like looking left or right. And I was like, we are getting gold. We are literally getting the
and
gold.
That is like on another movie, by the way. You would have been a week in that location, and we shot that in one day. I mean, that was a difficult day to get it all done, but you do, you get it done.
Oh,
that was crazy.
It was actually like one of my favorite days for whatever reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, and fun to see Michael. Like the only, I'm not into improv at all. I don't think it makes things better necessarily. I'm totally okay with people, Michael, like he changes things around in a way that is totally okay with me because it's the line. It's just said in a natural way. And I think Diane Keaton does that to dialogue too. And it's actually it's a great thing. It makes it sound so natural and real. Sometimes he'd be talking and I was like, did I write that? Or did he just say that? And I always wrote it, but it just sounds so natural that it was unnerving.
Totally.
But like, the line when he's saying to Mila, like, I'll go with you, except I can't on Thursday and I'm not free this day and whatever. And he has this whole speech and he changed it to like, except Thursday, can't.
Yeah.
And that's just great. That is a dream to me. So it's like, it's the line, but said funnier and better. So I would be
that's right.
remiss not to love that. But the one day we did allow a little improv was with Chloe Trost because she's so funny. And I just thought two comedy people together, like, why would you not let them just see what happens? And she did not disappoint. She was hilarious.
Well, we were just laughing so hard and I could tell, like, I feel like actors love to see, like, when, like, the director is just, like, holding their face, like they know they're doing something right. It's like not an out audience.
Yeah. It makes you want to make like a really big comedy because that's like those are the highest points on. When you were asking me the highlights, I'm thinking it's the days where people were funny,
Totally.
Same. The comedy scenes.
Yes.
I mean, obviously also Mila doing her big speech, that's a different kind of wonderful because you just see someone hit it out of the park and that's epic also.
I also love that scene where they're coming out to the car and I don't know, like that night, for whatever reason, I just was like, they're doing such great work and we're like going to end on time. I don't know. I was just like so thrilled.
Well, do you remember the problematic day?
Totally.
Because it was raining and they were meant to be outside at her car.
Yes.
And it rained and we couldn't shoot it outside. And so it was like a panic. It was like pouring rain randomly and it was a exterior night scene. And so then I thought it was too long of a scene to shoot it inside. It was going to feel way too static and I couldn't figure it out. And then I asked Michael if he would run through the scene with me. And I thought, okay, maybe we can do it from the doorway to the exit of the house because there's like that outdoor by the pool. And so I kind of figured it out with him, which was fun. And we walked and talked and we stopped and then we walked and we stopped. And I wanted to see where natural pauses were so that this is the thing is like, it's all prepared, but it feels natural. So I'm like, let's just walk and talk and we'll see where we pause. And I, poorly did Mila's side, but I was Mila and he was Andy. And, we did the scene and we stopped and we did the scene and we stopped and we kind of thought, yeah, I think it's going to work in here. And now and then I went home. I went home and I Googled some, because it was going to be I didn't know how to light it. And I looked up Manhattan and I emailed all these things to Jamie and I thought, let's turn this thing that's happened to us into the most exciting thing we can shoot. Let's make it the best it can be. And he really ran with that excitement. And then now it's one of my favorite, scenes in the movie.
Ay, se murió mi teléfono.
¿Necesitas uno nuevo? En Verizon podemos ahorrar en el Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus con Galaxy AI.
¿En serio?
Tú también puedes ahorrar con Verizon. Sí, en serio. Ahorra en 4 teléfonos Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus nuevos al intercambiar 4 teléfonos de nuestras mejores marcas con el Limited Ultimate. Además, ahorra en un Galaxy Watch o Tab. Visita tu tienda Verizon hoy. El reloj y la tablet requieren un plan de servicio. Se requiere que el teléfono de intercambio sea de Apple, Samsung o Google. Se aplican términos adicionales. Las funciones Galaxy AI de Samsung son gratis durante el 2025 y requieren ingresar con una cuenta Samsung.
The new Boost Mobile network is offering unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for life.
That sounds like a threat.
Then how do you think we should say it?
Unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for the rest of your life?
I don't know.
Until your ultimate demise.
What if we just say forever?
Okay.
$25 a month, forever.
Get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile forever.
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
Will full coverage make me look cakey? Is my undertone neutral or is it cool? We get it. Finding the right foundation is hard. But with Il Makiage, it's easy to find your perfect match online. Customized for your unique skin tone and coverage needs. Plus, with Try Before You Buy, you can try your full size at home for 14 days. With over 600,000 five-star reviews, this best-selling foundation is going viral for a reason. Take the Power Match quiz now at ilmakiage.com/quiz. ILMAKIAGE.com/quiz.
one more thing, before I go. You're my soulmate, right?
I just really loved making the movie because I just felt like we were a team, like Kevin and Jamie and you and me and Corey, and we were all in it. And, it just felt like I remembered why it was fun to make movies with people. Because when you actually love people and respect them and they respect you, like it can be a joy. I mean, that doesn't mean it's not going to be very hard, but I actually felt like this was kind of a joy.
It was a particularly wonderful crew, for sure. Like it felt like a family, and I still keep in touch with, when our trailer dropped, I heard from our PAs, one of the, Kristen from our sound department came to visit the, in post one day. And, I just keep in touch with all these people because they were all so wonderful to work with. They made the experience so great.
Our movie's coming out on Friday. It feels like it's been such a journey. We could have a whole other discussion about like the release of this film and all the sort of grassroots creative stuff that we're trying to bring to the table and like working every day. And like, it does feel like a little bit of a full-time job right now, which is what releasing a movie is, even if you have the biggest studio in the world, that's probably still the case. But I do feel like we've created this little family again, in that like, we don't have $60 million to spend on this release, right? And so we're all just like giving it our all, particularly you. And I just hope people go out and see the movie because it will just remind you, it will feel both fresh and nostalgic, and it will remind you of the films that I hope are made more and more again. And I just love you so much, and I love this movie so much.
I love you too. I can't imagine making this movie with anybody else. We had some high highs and some low lows, as you always do making a movie, but as long as you have the right people around you, it's all so worth it. And culminating in it coming out just feels kind of like giving birth, It's really intense and exciting.
It's coming out all around the country, Hal. I think that the last thing I'll ask you is like, I have a feeling why I think this movie will resonate with audiences. And I think you've talked a lot about this in like targeting, all these podcasts and all these people who can relate. But tell me in your own words why you think this story will resonate with wide audiences.
It's a hard question to answer, but I think you just have to go with like, this is the kind of movie I want to see. And I am the audience, and you're always thinking about the audience. And I went to a panel once and I heard that Guillermo del Toro draws the like little heads of the audience on the monitor on a piece of tape just to remember them. That's why you make the movie. So ultimately, as personal as it is, I didn't make it for myself. So I hope that what I noticed with this movie throughout the entire process was a lot of people like you saying to me, this is my life, and this is my story. So I'm very excited to release it from not just being my story anymore and have people say, that's me, or I was the kid of a father who remarried, or someone who can relate to his ex-wife, or, just as long as you can relate to somebody, hold on to something in this movie, that will be a really big win for me.
Well, it's so funny. Remember, we did a test screening and my dad came and he came out of it crying and being like, I could so relate to Goodrich. And like when he lost his business, that tore my heart out. And I was like, that's not the message I got from it, Dad. Like that. Right. Like for my dad, it was all about like failure, and that feeling of like loss and, trying to figure out who you are at that stage of life. But I was like, I'm so happy that like my dad got as much out of this as I did for different reasons,
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I hope that there's something in it for everybody, male and female. And, like everyone can relate to it. I hope. We'll see you on Friday.
All right, Hal. Love you so much. I'll probably be jumping on on a phone call with you in about 5 minutes. So we'll see each other.
That's right.
Very, very soon. All right,
well,
babe.
Thank you so much for having me.
This was so fun. This was the best. All right, babe. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Okay, so that was so fun. Vanessa, just catching up with Hallie, doing a pod with her, was just walking down memory lane.
She's the coolest. She just she's that kind of person you just want to be friends with.
Yeah.
Like, am I cool enough? Do I dress cool enough?
Well, it's so funny. It's like watching her promote this film and like help, because it's been a real like all hands on deck situation. Our distribution company is new to the scene. They're really trying to make a go of it with this movie. They're putting it out in over 1,000 movie theaters. We've had an amazing publicity team on board with us in 42 West. We have this digital team in Brigade, and so we're all sort of working, locking arms and working to get this film out. And Hallie has really been sort of leading the charge. She is just like, she will not take no for an answer in the best way. And you realize, again, we talked about this a little bit last week. It's like, that's how you get shit done. You just don't take the first no.
No, she has such amazing opinions and I think there's a lot of filmmakers who would be maybe afraid to overstep in the marketing process, but I think she has such a clear vision of how she wants this movie to be perceived. And I think is just being so smart with her decision making. And sometimes she'll give a note where I'm like, was that necessary? And then I'll see her note and be like, no, that was so necessary. Like that actually really made this better.
It's just that adage that everything matters. And I think, we had interviewed her mother last year, and I remember her saying everything matters. And Hallie is very much of the same school of filmmaking and just process, And I really appreciate it because really, I've worked with filmmakers where they do not notice the way an invitation looks. They don't notice the way set design looks. They don't notice costume. They don't notice. And to me, I so appreciate the care with which this film has been made because she has sort of put her seal and sign and stamp on every single moment of it. And so you really know that's like a full vision of a filmmaker, and by the same token, full vision of this release. So it's really been fun. It's really fun to find a partner that way who, you sort of align with in terms of your work ethic.
And it looks really good. Like the trailer looks good. The poster looks good. All the materials for everything look good. So the result was worth it.
Oh man, a lot of work. So guys, we hope you love this movie so much. We love it so much. We've been having a lot of people, in early screenings of it come out crying and also feeling like fulfilled and like their cup is filled. And I think that is kind of a rarity in this day and age of movie going. You go, horror is so incredibly successful as a genre right now. But I think this is sort of like the counter programming to all those horror films. So instead of going to see Smile 2, maybe go see Goodrich.
I mean, bring your family, bring your kids. I think it's one of those movies that it's so heartwarming. It's such an easy watch. The stakes are not that high. And I think you're just really committed. And the family is reflective of real life and feels like real people. And I think it's a little bit of a therapy session, but you come out feeling refreshed and feeling really good. Catharsis, I think.
I remember going to see Parenthood with my entire family, like my parents, my brothers and sisters, like we all went to this packed movie house on a Saturday night. And there was something for everyone because it felt like a multi-generational story. And this feels a little like that. You will feel emotional. You will laugh. You will, some of you will, my father will like correlate to Andy Goodrich's story. I correlate to Mila Kunis's story. There's, also young twins in it. And so I think there's something for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. I'm so excited.
Me too. All right, guys, we love you so much. Vanessa's going to do the wrap up.
Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Hollywood Gold Pod. Get your merch on our Stay Gold Features website or on Maisonette.com, where we also sell merch for kids and adults.
So true.
Yeah. And stay gold, everyone.
Don't forget to stay gold, guys.